Okay, what are your thoughts about the continued partnership between the city and NCS, Nevada Community Solutions?
That's a very interesting question.
I've asked it of everyone.
Its relationship obviously has gone on for a lot of years, and its relationship that I probably would have been in favor of initially, but not in the form it ended up taking, and it was, I think, unfortunate that particularly one of the previous councils, and we don't need to go into that because that's just being negative, but I think one of the problems is that they, in my opinion, should have never tied up basically all of our available land with one developer.
Okay.
Number one, and number two is that development agreement should have never been open-ended so that there was no time frame on them doing any development at all.
Right.
So primarily, you have a situation where the city we are and have been totally held hostage to one developer, and whether they decided they wanted to develop, they didn't. So we weren't determining our own destiny. They were going to determine our destiny for us.
Yes.
Not to say that someday that maybe they wouldn't have done that, but at this point in time, for a long, long time, they didn't proceed with any development plans at all. So there didn't seem to be any real enthusiasm to doing any development anyway. So anyway, do I think that we should continue with them? Well, I think that depends, and I think that they voiced some of their concerns that they basically wanted to leave the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I had one of the council people, I think, make a comment the other day, one of the new council members, that they got the problems with NCS all straightened out. I'm wondering what they straightened out, because they haven't done anything on it. But what had happened just right at the end of the last administration is that we had worked out a deal to try to start working the city away from that.
Right.
And we knew we couldn't just cut the ties, because unfortunately one of the things given to them by a council person against the advice of the attorney who was fired shortly thereafter, advised them very strongly not to do two things: not to give options on property you don't own, because they even had options on future property that we hadn't even taken down. I don't think that's legal.
I can't imagine it would be.
Yeah, I can't have an option on something, or I can't sell something I don't own, and
Right.
I never could have gone along with that, number one. But I think even more damaging is that they were given the opportunity, against the advice of the city attorney at the time, to let them pull out anytime they wanted, and they could terminate the contract anytime they wanted. The $5 million down payment they had given the city on the land, and that's all the city had ever received, and it was kept in an escrow. It's still there today.
5 or 6 million?
$6 million.
6 million. Okay.
Excuse me, it is $6 million. I'm thinking 5 because they want to take $1 million out.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a bad situation, because then we were required to pay them interest from day one. Well, if they sit on that money for 25 years and don't do anything, that $6 million is going to be $18 million. We're going to have to give them back when they decide they want to leave. So they were just parking money. We were being a bank for them. They were parking money here.
Yeah.
So in order for
Thank
them
you.
to try to get out of the agreement themselves, because they're the ones that initiated, they came to the mayor and council, and they wanted to come up with a new program, and they realized that there was some opportunity out there in that sports area out there, which an area we've kind of identified as an area we'd like to expand our sports facility out there. They felt there was some opportunity there, and there's 500 acres there. And much against my opinion, or my desires, I guess is my opinion and my desires, we gave up 500, an option on those 500 acres. But to me, it was an option on the 500 acres, or it was not being able to do anything with the rest of the city, I felt that, the option, they had to perform in a very short period of time. The contract was written in a very good, and this time, good for the city.
And that's the contract that was amended in 2010?
Right.
Okay.
And so that puts the city now in a very good position, and they have $1 million that they were to give us for an amenity. However, that may turn out to be a little bit of a problem because there's some timelines on that, and if we don't meet the timelines, they probably won't do that, and they'll just walk away with their money. But I'm just concerned that they want additional land out there. I know they do, and I'm afraid I would have to be. That's one thing I would definitely have to be against because. Based on previous performance, I'm not going to give them some of our most. That is some of our best land out there, but the very best commercial piece for a hotel and for other, major things that would tie in with the sports thing.
And that's the
would
10
be on
acres.
that piece of land. Yeah, that's that.
That's
10
the
acres.
10 acres.
Yeah,
okay.
and I certainly couldn't support that unless I saw. If I could see a signed contract from Howard Johnson, they're going to build a hotel there, then, maybe we could talk about it. But
yeah.
so I don't see long term, I don't think that they have plans, and I'm not sure we do. At this point in time, I haven't had a chance to talk to any of the attendees in the meeting in Jackson Hole yet, exactly what their discussion was. But
Okay. Talk a little bit about, you've been on the water board now for 2 years, almost 2 years you've been president, but you've been on the water board 3 years now?
no, just the two.
Just the two, okay.
Yeah.
And it's kind of,
John
it was
Paul
an
actually
easy,
was the
yeah.
president part of that
Yeah,
2
that's
years
true.
too, so I wasn't president the full 2
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
It was easy to ask this question of the new council people because I asked them how they felt about their new appointments, but I can't ask you how you feel about your new appointment. But talk a little bit about the water board and try to tie in the relationship, if you will, between your membership on the water board and your membership on the council, because I think some people are not exactly understanding that tie-in there.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question because I've had that question myself, and it's pretty easy to explain, but if they don't understand it, it does, ask, there are a lot of questions asked because of that. First of all, the Water District is a quasi-governmental organization chartered by the state of Nevada.
And it is separate.
It is separate from the
entity
city.
from the city.
It has no connection with the city. They operate separately. And when they were chartered by the state of Nevada, it was set up the way it's structured now with a 5-person board.
Uh-huh.
And one member of the board was an appointee from the city of Mesquite, and
Okay.
one was from Bunkerville.
Right.
And so they set it up that way. And then there's 3 elected board members.
Okay, 2 elected from Mesquite and 1 elected from
Bunkerville.
Okay.
And it says in their charter that Mesquite should have proportionate to their size representation, and that it can never be. There was some question about whether the offices should be moved to Bunkerville, but if you go back and pull up the charter for it, you'll see that the state said that initially when it was set up that the headquarters would always be in Mesquite, Nevada.
Right. Yeah.
So there are 2 separate entities. The state legislature intended for Mesquite to have an appointee and for Bunkerville to have an appointee.
Mm-hmm. But how does that tie in then with your sitting on the city council, and then is it kind of supposed to be a liaison type, or is it more a bridge to for the 2 entities?
Well, I can't speak to what the legislature had in mind, but I'm sure what the legislature had in mind is they wanted to make sure that both communities felt like that their concerns would be watched after by a member of their respective community governmental units,
Okay.
And so we all know that there's a book out there. I don't know, you've probably read a Cadillac. Was it Cadillac Desert? That's about the water in the desert. Well, I think we all know that the most important factor about the development or redevelopment or all this development talk we've talked about really boils down to water
Exactly.
and power.
Yeah.
And of course, the power, we have a similar situation here in Mesquite area and, this part of Clark County where we're not on Nevada Power, we're on another quasi-governmental,
Right.
same type of setup that about a year ago or 2 years ago changed to a 7-person board for the
Okay.
very reason, because their charter also said that Mesquite should have proportionate representation. So I think that's an issue that's kind of boiling in the background on the water district, because I know there will be great resistance to that by some people that they would change the structure of the board. But ultimately that probably will happen because Mesquite, as it becomes 30, 40, 50,000 people and Bunkerville
Yeah.
has, minimal growth, that it's going to be so out of proportion that, it's
Yeah.
already there. But anyway. And it's a big challenge. I have to be careful that who I'm talking to and what I'm talking to about as it comes to water issues, because I can't let myself become put in a position where there's a conflict of interest, because I do have an interest with whatever happens with the city. But I don't look at that as a big conflict of interest, because I think whatever happens with the water is important to the city.
Yes.
And so it's not like there's an issue, and I think one of the problems that they had in the past with the water district was that they looked at themselves as almost competitors, like they didn't want to get along. Well,
Yeah.
that just doesn't work, and it won't work in the future. Particularly, it won't work in the future.
Yeah.
So that's what what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to bring both communities together and both governmental entities together for the common good of the people who live in the valley.
Okay.